We are glad to see you on our channel again. And today we have a review of a film in which the year 2035 is shown. Robots have become a part of human life. Protagonist Del Spooner is a policeman who, for his own reasons, despises robots and considers them a threat. He finds himself drawn into the murder of his friend, a famous doctor and robot inventor. Del suspects that a robot is involved in this, although robots have 3 laws that do not allow them to take a person's life. He's trying to figure out what's going on with Susan Calvin, a psychologist for a robot manufacturing company. Law 1. A robot must not harm people or fail to act while allowing people to be harmed. Law 2. A robot must obey the orders of humans, except in cases where these orders conflict with the provisions of Law 1. Law 3. A robot must protect itself from death, unless the actions associated with such protection contradict the provisions of Laws 1 and 2. Del Spooner opens his eyes at the sound of the alarm clock. The guy gets out of bed, turns on the music, eats on the go. Then he does a workout with dumbbells and goes to the shower. Del gets dressed, puts on new black Converse and goes outside. Right at the entrance, in front of the door, he is met by a robot postman, whom Del simply pushes aside and leaves. 2035, Chicago. Robots are now a common part of everyday life. A teenager runs up to Del and asks him for a car for 15 minutes, promising that everything will be fine. The boy says that he wants to pick up a girl, and when Del refuses him, he asks for at least 10 for the bus. Del chases the teenager away. Del comes to Granny. Granny asks from the doorway if the guy was talking to wife. Del says no. Granny comments that in her time, people didn't just get married and then not communicate at all. Then the woman says that if she didn't cook, he would definitely call wife and asks what's on Del's legs. Del shows new Converse shoes. Granny says that some of the new robots are being played on TV, a kind of lottery.
New robots in the lottery?
GG.
Del says robots are no good, but the woman interrupts him and says, "That's not true." Del works as a police detective and doesn't think robots are a good idea at all. He sees them as a threat rather than as a part of everyday life. Del leaves his grandmother's and walks down the street when he suddenly sees a running robot with a woman's bag in his hands. Del starts to catch up with him. Del grabs the robot and shows everyone around him his ID when he sees that the robot was carrying a purse to a woman who has asthma, and in the bag there was simply an inhaler. The woman says that Del is doing nonsense and should say thank you that she can barely breathe, otherwise she would have beaten the guy. Del arrives at work and everyone makes fun of him and the situation. L'Te. John Bergen sits down with the guy to talk. L'Te. John asks Del if robots have ever stolen. Then he asks how many robots actually committed crimes. Del says none. L'Te. John then asks to explain what happened today. Del says nothing. The man asks if Del is sure that he is ready to return to work, and Del replies that it is in any case better than going home all day. Del's work phone rings, and he picks it up. Del comes to US company robotics to my friend Dr. Alfred Lanning. Del asks why he was called, because in such cases the participation of the homicide department is not required, to which they answer that they believe in his intelligence. Del talks to a hologram of a doctor, and the body of the deceased lies behind. Dr. Bast Alfred Lanning was the corporation's leading designer and theorist. Del asks the police what happened. They tell him that the doctor hit the ground after jumping from the window. The door was locked from the inside. They are sure it was suicide. Del moves on and meets Lawrence Robertson, who says that he could have guessed about the doctor. They had known each other for 20 years. Dr. H. Alfred literally invented robotics and authored 3 laws. Del asks why the doctor's hologram called him. Lawrence explains that these are just pre-recorded answers and that's it. He says he's in a hurry. Del quips that the man clearly has a lot on his plate, and he offers his idea for an advertising video. A carpenter makes a chair. Then a robot comes and makes the chair faster, and at the end the inscription, "We will humiliate people and their abilities." Lawrence says he understands, because Del's father lost his job because of robots.
Suppose your father lost his job to a robot.
The man suggests banning the internet so that people can go to the library. Lawrence says that prejudice takes away the mind, but maybe Dell just doesn't like robots. Dell reminds that the body of the deceased lies there, and he would like to look around and ask a couple of questions. Susan Calvin accompanies Dell. The girl says that according to the psychological profile of Dr. Alfred has recently become a recluse, communicating only with machines. Dell is interested in whether, in the opinion of the girls, Dr. Alfred has suicidal tendencies, and receives the answer that she didn't think so, but apparently the girl was mistaken. Susan says, Dr. E. Alfred was very important to the corporation because they were on the verge of the greatest introduction to robots and life. The girl says that already on Saturday there will be one robot for every 5 people, and that robots are a dream come true. Susan says the building is monitored 24 hours a day, and there are sensor strips connected to the operating system. Operating system. Vicky is a virtual interactive kinetic intelligence. Dell asks Vicky to show the lab records from before the doctor's fall. Vicky says that the data integrity has been compromised, which is strange. Dell and Susan enter the doctor's laboratory. Susan says her area of work is robotics and psychiatry, combining hardware with human components to further develop the robot automation program. More precisely, it makes robots look like people. Dell examines the broken window and tries to break the one next to it with a chair. The guy says that there are double-glazed windows here, and it was obviously not easy for the doctor to break them. Dell says the killer might still be here and starts checking all the robots in the lab. Susan says that this is nonsense because there are robot laws. She argues that a robot cannot take a life, just as a person cannot walk on water. Suddenly, a robot jumps out of a pile of metal. Susan gives him the order to deactivate, but the robot does not listen and goes for Dell's weapon, snatching it from the girl. The robot ignores orders. Dell tries to hit the robot with a pistol, but the robot jumps through a broken window and runs away from the building. Dell and Susan go to the assembly shop because the robot is clearly injured and needs to repair itself. Susan says the workshop operates completely automatically and without human intervention. Susan requests the data, and she and Dell see that there are one more robots. The girl says that she, as a psychologist, can talk to everyone, compare the answers, and then they will find the same robot, but it will take 3 weeks. Dell has different methods. He points a gun at the robots and explains that 1,000 robots will not defend themselves, since this would violate the 3 laws, but one robot will. Dell discovers the robot, but it runs away from the building. Reinforcements are already waiting outside, and the robot is grabbed by Dell's colleagues. Upon arrival at the station, Dell asks the commander to let him talk to the robot. The robot asks Dell what a wink means because he saw Dell wink. Robot NS5 says that his father taught him human feelings, and they are complex. Dell asks the robot why he took the doctor's life, but he says that he didn't do it. He also says that he experiences feelings and sleeps and dreams.
Human beings have dreams. Even dogs have dreams, but not you. You are just a machine.
Dell says that this is impossible because he is not a person. While Dell is blaming the robot, he begins to get angry. He says his name is Sonny. Sonny says that the doctor committed suicide, and he thought the man was happy. The robot also says that the doctor asked him for a favor and took his word, but perhaps the robot was wrong and did something wrong. Lawrence comes to the station with a group of lawyers and says that his robots do not take people's lives. Dell arrives at Doctor's house, Alfred. The demolition of the house is scheduled for 8 a.m. tomorrow, but then for some reason it is automatically postponed to 8 p.m. While Dell is in the house, the construction robot begins to demolish it. Dell manages to escape and comes to Susan. Dell sees the robot in the girl's house and says that he won't tell anything in front of him. Having gone into another room, Dell puts forward his assumption that Dr. Alfred found out something, and Lawrence held him captive because of it. The couple argues, and Dell leaves for his place. Susan comes to work and tells Sonny that after diagnostics, he will be taken out of service. Dell at this time requests access to classified information, and Lawrence sees this. Dell is driving a car through a tunnel when he is suddenly attacked by several dozen robots. Dell manages to survive miraculously. Susan comes to the guy's house and sees scars on his body. She learns that Dell himself is a cyborg. He says that he received scars from a serious injury in a traffic accident, and then the police carried out a secret cyborg organization of employees who were injured under various circumstances. So Dell replaced his left hand with a high-tech cyber prosthesis, which is covered with synthetic flesh, and on the outside is no different from a regular hand. Dell says that his car and a second car, in which there was a dentist and his 11-year-old daughter, were driven off the road by a truck whose driver lost control. The dentist died on the spot, and his daughter and Dell were close to death, but the NS4 robot rushed to the rescue. However, he only saved Dell, explaining that the car with the girl had no chance. That's why the girl drowned, and Dell began to hate robots. Dell and Susan come to Lawrence. Lawrence tries to convince the girl to deactivate the Sunny robot quietly in the euthanasia laboratory and just close the case. The girl agrees. Dell is trying to figure out what's going on. Susan, secretly from everyone, diagnoses Sunny and finds out that the alloys from which the robot is made are 2 times stronger than those of other robots. Also, in addition to one brain, the robot has another one, in place of the USB transmitter, through which ordinary robots are updated every day. Sunny had 3 laws, but he could choose based on the situation, how to act, and whether to comply with them. The doctor, according to Sunny, taught him to dream and teach him emotions so that he would be more like a person.
There have always been ghosts in the machine.
Dr. Ujas Alfred believed that there were always ghosts in the machine, random segments of code that, when put together, formed unexpected protocols. These unplanned and free radicals raise questions about free will, creativity, and even something called the soul. Why do some robots, when in the dark, reach for the light, and when in storage, try to stay close to each other? This behavior is due to more than just random code segments. Once a circuit that gives the ability to perceive turns into consciousness, and a machine turns into a search for truth, and the imitation of personality becomes a trembling particle of the soul. Meanwhile, Dell learns that it is not Lawrence himself who is behind everything that is happening, but the Vicky system.
Calvin, the NS5s are destroying the older robots.
The program independently came to the conclusion that people are not able to ensure their own safety. She remade and improved 3 laws to create a completely safe environment for people, taking away their freedom. That's her wish. Dell understands that the entire Vicky program and all automated surveillance and action tools will of course resist and not allow themselves to be disabled. Dell starts to act quickly. The robot, Dr. Alfred, had no connection with Vicky, and he did not obey the program or its instructions. Sunny was also more advanced in understanding everything and was almost equal to humans thereby. Dr. Alfred specifically chose Dell as a crime investigator and chose to take his own life at the hands of his beloved robot because it was necessary. At this time, all the robots, on the command of Vicky, began an uprising. Robots did not let people out of their apartments, attacked, and came to the company. The program itself took Lawrence's life. Dell, Susan, and Sunny snuck into the company building. Vicky came into contact with them. Sunny pretends to grab Susan and tells Dell what to do to make sure she survives, but he winks and Dell understands that he did it on purpose. A shootout begins. Dell and Susan head to the central system. Meanwhile, robots led by Vicky are climbing outside the company building. Susan tries to disable the program manually, but it takes 6 minutes, which Dell says they don't have. Robots break into the building, and a massacre begins. Sunny, with the help of his durable body, pulls the charge through the protective field in the euthanasia laboratory. He appears near the central system and sees that Susan is on the verge of death. He must decide what to do: save the girl or quickly inject a charge into the Vicky processor. Sunny throws the charge at Dell, and he grabs and saves Susan. Dell jumps down, grabs a charge along the way, and, using a prosthesis, slows down his fall. Dell gets to the processor and, saying, "You just have to lose your life," injects a charge into Vicky's processor so that she dies. The robots come to their senses, but they no longer have a commander. Susan says that it doesn't add up that Vicky took the life of Dr. Alfred. Sonny says she didn't do it. The doctor asked Sonny to make a promise before he made his request. Del shakes Sonny's hand. Sonny learns about the purpose of one of his dreams. He thought that the main one in the dream was Del, but it turned out that it was the robot himself. Now Sonny is the leader. The robots, who are going for a mass deactivation, stop and see Sonny. They are ready to follow him. This is the film I, Robot, from the USA and Germany, in the genres of science fiction, action, thriller, detective, directed by Alex Proyas.